I consider myself a nomad in terms of my personality, in terms of my lifestyle. I don't come from anywhere. A lot of people ask, oh, where are you from? And they'll push that question. And I push the answer that I am not from anywhere because I've moved around every 2 or 3 years of my life. How I've come here, it's part of the many cities that I've gone back and forth. The last year I've been a true nomad without a house. And when I had to come back and kind of cut that journey short due to some family stuff, I decided to come back to Dallas because I was in Dallas for about 4 years. And it became a home because I made a life family here, made friends that over the 4 years have become part of my life for the rest of my life. And so that's kind of a snapshot into who I am. Prior to that, I come from 17 years of corporate experience. So anywhere from big companies like Coca-Cola, IBM, 9 West Jones Apparel, so I've been in fashion. I started off my career in the agency side, did that for about 1.5 years and decided I want to go to the client side because agencies really never make the final decision. You're only there to influence your client. And so I went to client side thinking, okay, I can actually make decisions. Ended up going through all the different industries. My last 7.5 years was with AT&T. And the decision to take the year off wasn't really something that suddenly happened. It was actually a decision I made probably 5 years ago. I didn't know that that decision would lead to taking a year off or whatever I wanted to take off. But when I got divorced a second time, I made a decision to start making decisions based on what I wanted versus what everybody else said I should be doing. And that just kind of helped me finally grow into who I was and start making the decisions that, okay, well, eventually I'm going to leave corporate. So that was a 2.5-year process before I actually left. There wasn't anything in particular that I was doing except mentally letting myself know that in 2.5 years, 3 years, I was going to be letting go of a lifestyle that I've known my entire life. And the reason I say I've known it my entire life is part of being a nomad was because my dad was in corporate. So people say, you know, are you a military brat? And I'm not a military brat, I was a corporate brat. And then when I grew up, I became an actual corporate brat. So it was more of a mental shift in realizing that at some point I was going to let go of that world and I was about to jump into something new. And I didn't know what I was going to really do. I had an idea of a long-term project, but initially it was just about taking that jump and kind of taking some time to figure out what I wanted to do rather than jumping into anything else. I think the eventual goal is to own yourself. And you have to understand that you have to own yourself before you can even go on that journey. And so for me, and I think for a lot of women, it starts when we're really, really young. I would almost say from 13 to 33, I was a different person. I was the person that listened to what my elders said, what my parents said, what society said, what the books said, what, everything said, this is how you become successful in life. This is what you need to do. These are the confines that you need to stay within. And so from 13 to 33, and I say 13 because there's a little story about how my best friend at that time, her mother had once told me, she's like, I saw you in the schoolyard and I wanted my daughter to become friends with you because you were just out there and laughing and smiling. But I remember from 13 to 33, that was not the person I was. I was always hesitant, about what I was saying, what I was doing, even though I knew myself and I felt like I was in this little box and I just wanted to be outside of that box. And so in many ways I actually made wrong decisions because I would overthink everything. I'd worry about what my parents are going to say. I wasn't quite so worried about society, but it was about my parents, right? And so they were very liberal in every sense of the word, except for when it came to, so to say, relationships. And I'm not just talking about the male-female relationships, it's just that, your life is your private life and, you don't put it out there and you don't get too friendly with people and this and that. And my personality is very friendly. I am the total opposite of that. I'm actually very open. I put everything out there. And I don't worry about it because that's who I am. In my head, I think people will either accept me or not accept me. So 13 to 33, live this lifestyle of listening to what I thought was right. And then at 33, when I got my second divorce, and even that was a process of me saying, no, I'm not going to go through this anymore, and actually asking my second ex-husband to leave the house because I paid the rent and I had the job. It was the beginning of a process of saying, I'm going to own myself now. I'm going to make decisions that are going to make me feel good without hurting other people, though. I will say part of that journey over those 5 years, and I've told this to many women that I know, is that we think we're going to look very egotistical. And I've told them, I don't care how egotistical you think you are. Trust me, you're not even close to being egotistical. But unless you think it, you're not even getting halfway there, because you're not putting your confidence on the table, because you're still thinking about it. So if you think you're egotistical, push it a little bit more, and you'll get even to that point where actually people accept you and think of it as confidence versus egotism. My career was actually going better. My last job at AT&T was probably my best job, but I also knew it was the last job I was going to do when I took it. So it was all those things where things were actually going well. My mom told me 2 Januaries ago, she's like, I've never seen you be so happy and calm at home. And she was so right, because I never had been. Because even with my parents, you know, I don't put everything out there with them, but they know me, they know my personality, and they know I'm happy, and that's all that really matters. And so it made it easier for me to kind of make my decisions and kind of go forward. And do they agree with everything all the time? No. I still go home and I still feel like the 16-year-old when I'm home. But that's not going to affect the decisions I make that are some of the bigger long-term decisions. I don't do stuff in front of them that I know would make them upset, you know, but they're still my parents. I try not to hurt them. And that's kind of a philosophy that I'm going forward with, is you have to own yourself, and you have to understand that people are going to either accept you or not accept you, and that your own self-confidence comes from yourself. And you can't look to others for it, because we all try to, but at the end of the day, when you start finding that, what I call life family, like, they accept you for whoever you are, and that's all that really matters. Yeah. The last job I did, I was in a sales organization, and 3 Januaries ago, went to the kickoff meeting. Walk in, I'm one of 3 women in a room full of about 200 people, and I'm one of 5 diverse people. So I walk in and I text my boss on the work device, because I was like, it didn't matter to me. I was like, real diversity here. I'm like, I'm one of 3 women, one of 5 diversity people. And he's like, yeah, that's kind of how we are right now. And I'm like, in my head, I was like, there's no reason. So I worked in an organization that was very much not like me. I was different anyway, and on top of that, I have my own differences, so I stand out. So those are the facts for a lot of women, right? You go into organizations and you're either the only one or one of very few. And I think, at least for the generation who we're in our late 30s, 40s, right? We were raised kind of to say, or not raised to say, but we were never really taught to collaborate with other women. I think the early 30s to maybe 20s, they do a little bit more. So I think a lot of women in kind of our generation face the fact that we are now getting to understand that women are actually collaborators, and that we need to collaborate with each other instead of each going for that glass ceiling on our own. So I think that's another fact that's happening right now, but it's taking some time to get there. The other thing is that, you know, and I know there's tons of articles on this, right, is that we don't ask for what we want. Men do. And if you don't ask for it, we're not going to get it. A lot of us think, well, I'm going to do good work and I'm going to be promoted. It doesn't happen that way. And that's for men too, though, because as I went through my career, what I started seeing was, instead of looking at it as men versus women, I looked at some of my peers who also did good work and all that kind of stuff, but they weren't askers either. So it wasn't that it was just the women. So women need to understand, you need to ask. You need to be proactive about your own career. You need to have a quarterly meeting with your boss and say, these were my goals for this quarter. This is what I've accomplished. This is where I'm going. This has nothing to do with the corporate performance reviews. This is you putting that time on the calendar and making sure your boss takes that time. And if they're not comfortable, well, you got a little bit of work to do and you need to find another job. About 4 or 5 months ago, I started studying real estate development, learning the whole process, and that takes up my time. But basically, I want to go into almost a traditional industry, but build stuff that would then connect globally, because you would then replicate this in multiple cities. They would all be connected. In some ways, it is a precursor to the type of people that would be on the ship. So I'm building the community, because at the end of the day, you need tens of thousands of people. Anything and everything can change. And so, according to me, if I'm hoping to put $1 or money into a project this year, and if I don't, I may end up doing like a regular job for 2 years and then going back into it, because it also depends on the cycle of real estate. Mm-hmm. So that's why I say anything could change. Nothing is set in stone. And that's one of the things that a lot of people, and especially women, I think we're more wired to be okay with change, and understanding that I didn't want to live a lifestyle that I thought I was supposed to live, or that most people live. I have a statement that I make. I don't do the trifecta. I don't do husbands, pets, or babies. And, I've had 2 husbands. I don't have pets. My second ex-husband actually has our pet. And babies, I've never really cared to have my own babies. I like children that are older. They're not physically dependent. I know that about myself. I don't like physically dependent people. Dependent on other things, that's fine, but yeah, not physically. So I think when I start defining those things, it taught me that, okay, I'm in this corporate career. So actually, these were some of the things I thought about before I even left corporate. Was I could stay in corporate and go up the ladder and work on my vacations, and then get more vacation, and then be at such a high level that I have to work on my vacations. And the nomad in me said, can't do that. The whole point of me making money was actually so that I can travel, or so I could become a traveler. But instead, I decided, okay, well, let's see me. I tried to find the infrastructure, so to say, for being a nomad. Couldn't find it. Okay, well, I don't have any responsibility. Why don't I build it? That gives me a guiding light. It gives me something to do. And on the way, I'm kind of enjoying life. I'm a people person. People is my crack, so to say. Somebody asked me once, like, what's your crack? His was laughter. I said, mine, I think, is people. Like, I love people, but I think it's people and places. I like to say I live life through experiencing people and places. So, nomad in me gets really happy. But I think those are the things that kind of continue to drive me. So it's not about having goals. It's just about continuing to go towards something, continuing to enjoy life and day to day. We do go through our ups and downs. It's just when you're not in your down, you always have to make sure you analyze your down and understand what happened, and have trigger questions that you ask yourself while you're in your down phase to make sure that you don't stay there. But the other thing also is that life family or your friends or whatever, and them knowing you in and out, that they know at what point they need to intervene or whatever, right? For me, it's a little bit longer. Nobody really has had to intervene. But what I'm trying to say is that there are those points when you are low, and so a specific trigger example for me is, I say that I want somebody in my life, but I look at when I am happy, and I'm much more happier in that state, because that's just who I am. And I've learned that that's who I am. And if I do have somebody in my life, it's not because they're there all the time. Can't do that. But it's there because there's a partnership, or they're making my life more happy, or whatever. So you gotta understand that there are low points. I think sometimes us as women weren't taught that it's okay to collaborate until we started doing it and realized that we're not competition. Because it's not, number one, there's no competition between us, and number two, it's not actually even a competition against men. It's more of women collectively and as individuals need to feel strong about themselves, and that's the power of being a woman, is that you just need to own yourself, you need to feel strong about it, you need to rely on that network that you have around you and know that it's a safe network to do it around, and put your confidence on the table, and in some ways on the line, because if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for you.